Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi Fruit Loop.
Did you know that there is a research vessel called the RV Flip? It is the only vessel in the world capable of shifting from horizontal to vertical position in the middle of the ocean.
That's crazy.
What if you were on that ship?
Dude, I'd be sick. I'd be sick at the
It literally flips like the Titanic. Like it flips.
Really?
Yeah, and it's like long and it can go down. They do like all kind of marine research, whatever.
Oh my God. What do you grab onto when you're like upside down?
Pair buckle up.
For real. Okay, so if you're an OG, you know Fruit Loop and I started this podcast the day they found JJ and Tylee on Chad's property. And we did this for a few years. You guys had the opportunity to get some property to fulfill a dream of both of yours. Tell us how this started.
So I already have the ministry called Channel Missions, and we have three pillars. We have the hiding place, which is what we're talking about today, a domestic violence program. We have a program called Saunter, and we have a program called Reach. We have those three pillars inside of our ministry, and we reach people in the community in all three ways. But the hiding place is our big program as we serve DV victims throughout the United States. Basically.
Yeah, and I'm a survivor of domestic violence. So I came to Jennifer and her cousin Joe, who are the founders of Channel Missions, and basically brought them the third pillar, asking if we could start doing more. Basically, this program that we're going to talk about today was built off of my experience and the resources that were lacking from me. In Pickens County, there were no programs like the program we run. So it was really important to be able to give back in that way and to create a program that can make a lasting impact in survivors' lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how quickly you guys were able to get the property, get moved up there, and get survivors on site. But before we get into the actual hiding place, just give us a good overview of what constitutes domestic violence. It's not always physical.
Domestic violence is defined as a pattern of behavior in any relationship that is used to gain or maintain power, control over an intimate partner. It's important to note that DV can happen to anyone, any sex, social status, religion, culture. It knows no boundary, rich, poor, anywhere. And we have clients all over that spectrum.
Statistically, I mean, what are the statistics on domestic violence?
Yeah, so according to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner abuse in their lifetime. That averages nearly 20 people per minute being abused in the United States by an intimate partner. And during 1 year, this equates to over 10 million men and women. And it's important for us that we note that. We serve through the hiding place both men and women because it can happen to anyone.
When Fruit Loop and I covered Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, that was something we talked about with Charles Vallow, is that he was a victim, obviously, of domestic violence that ended his life, but also a victim of more of the emotional abuse in the months leading up to his murder. I think we need to change the narrative in this country because it's still almost a taboo subject that men can be victims, but I mean, they have just as good of a chance of being a victim really as a woman.
Absolutely. And I think for a male, and we have had them call to our hotline, for them, it's almost like a weakness and they're embarrassed because of that. And it's not the case.
What are some other misconceptions that you guys want to clear the air about when it comes to domestic violence?
Often we get calls from individuals thinking we're not going to help them because abuse was not physical or they didn't file a police report, those things like that. That is the biggest misconception about domestic violence is there's multiple types, right? Physical, sexual, emotional, verbal, financial, spiritual, reproductive, and there's so many other categories. And I hear it all the time in voices that call our line. It's not domestic violence because it wasn't physical. Some women never file a police report. They just leave. And that's okay. I'm glad you got out. But they'll tend to fight that battle with, well, I don't have any proof. I don't have any evidence. In our state, if you're going to file for divorce on domestic violence, you have to have a police report. And solely that's in South Carolina. You would have to check your laws in your state because I'm not familiar with all of those. But in our state, that's how it is.
You know, I think what's sad too is a lot of people who may even think about filing a police report fear the repercussions, because these days people that commit domestic violence oftentimes are let out with low bonds. They're not held for an extended amount of time to give the victim time to get away. Do you think that contributes to the lower number of people that report to authorities? Or do you think it's just a lot of different things that go into why men and women don't actually make that police report?
Yeah, I think so. I think one is out of fear or not being believed. We work very closely with our police departments, and ours in our area are amazing. Things do slip through, somebody not being as thorough.
And sometimes when you file a report, both people get arrested, and that's something that is really tough. A police officer can't come to a conclusion sometimes. They just arrest both people. So I think that's something that really scares survivors. And then also, if I file a police report, are my children going to be stripped from me? So I think there's several things that kind of go through a survivor's head, but also with order of protections, when we file those, something that's really tough is that they get the person's address during those protections, because you have to fill out the paperwork, right? And they're going to be given their address. So yes, you can't go to this location, but here's the new location.
Yeah.
So that's tough too. We've had a lot of survivors say, I'd rather just disappear and not do anything with the police.
Yeah. Yeah. And we know orders of protection, it's a piece of paper, right? Mm-hmm. If they know where you are, that piece of paper is not going to keep them from coming and finding you. We understand that. And that's a big hurdle. It's because these abusers are violent. They're controlling, they're manipulative. They want to seek to harm you. So that's a big hurdle.
For sure.
Yeah.
If you know somebody and you have a suspicion that they could be involved in a domestic violence relationship, what are some things that they may want to look for to see if there are any clues that actually could be happening?
First of all, physical signs. So if it is physical abuse, you're going to see things such as bruises, a lot of the times on the arm, black eyes, broken bones. And then also you're going to see maybe the person is starting to get a little angrier than normal, agitated, having anxiety, changes in sleep habits, developing a drug or alcohol problem, esteem, seeming fearful, symptoms of depression, talking about or attempting suicide, becoming reserved and distant. So someone that usually is very bubbly and outgoing has become very reserved. That's a major sign. Then begins isolating themselves or cutting off contacts with family members and friends. They just disappear.
Some of it's canceling appointments or meetings with you at the last minute, drops out of activities they would usually enjoy, exhibits excessive privacy concerning their personal life or the person with whom they're in a relationship with. I know some of the stuff that we see sometimes is wearing long sleeves during the summer.
Yeah.
Like that's a big telltale. It's 115 degrees outside.
Or like a turtleneck or a scarf.
Or scarf or something like that. They're often late to work or other appointments. Constant calls, text, or tracking by their partner.
Tracking is a huge thing.
Yes.
You got, now, just to interrupt here, when women come, because you house women and children on site and men are housed off site, but one of the things that you guys require is that the survivors hand their phones over.
Right. So when we meet with a survivor to bring them on site, we ask them to hand over their phones or do this for us, turn on airplane mode. Doing things like that allows us to get them on site and then connects them to our Wi-Fi. Cellular data isn't a thing and location services are off. Things like that, just to protect our location and protect them. We also house a lot of women in hotels in their area to better suit them, because on site isn't always best for everyone. So even in those hotels, we require them and ask them to turn off those location services. Tracking is a real thing. We have multiple women that have that issue that we're working with right now.
It's not one or two. It's 4 or 5 trackers that they continually.
And like trackers in their kids' backpacks, things like that. It's just crazy.
Yeah. And then I guess the other part of that is that you don't want that moment of weakness. These people are in cycles. Cycles are so hard to break, especially domestic violence cycles, is that you don't want that moment of weakness where the abuser could be sweet talking and then they fall back into that same routine when they made such a big jump to get out.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
We just got a call, and the call I received the other day was a female, And she was so upset with herself because she had went back. And that was the case, the love bombing. So now she's back on the street because of that situation and what happened. Jumping right back in, having very little money available to them, not having access to credit cards, that controlling financial stuff, not having access to a vehicle. That's a big one. Jealousy is huge, or being possessive, always accusing them of having an affair or something like that is a telltale sign.
There have been times too where I called you or reached out and you were like, I can't talk. We're going to pick a survivor up from this parking lot. I mean, you guys may get them from the hospital. I've seen times where Breann has sat with a survivor as they're getting checked out when things got very physical, or you guys coordinate with local authorities to where you may meet at a place. And then when you guys say the hiding place, it really is the hiding place. And that's what I love about it. It's so remote.
Yeah,
it takes an hour for me to get there from house. These are not 5 minutes apart like they used to be. But the thing that impressed me most the first time I went is the serenity of when you step on that property. It's just the vibe of nature, and you hear this little kind of river. Is a river, right?
Yeah,
kind of river running. It's very peaceful. You guys are so welcoming and loving, but you have to wonder, is it just this overwhelming feeling for these survivors of, oh my gosh, I'm somewhere safe finally?
Yeah. That's what they always say. The first night in safety, sleeping in safety, not being afraid of being killed or strangled in the night. They're able to sleep in a comfortable bed on site, knowing that they're not going to be found, that it is remote, and they have a community finally that actually cares and has heard their story. I think that through shame dies in that kind of space, a safe space where you can just be yourself, tell your story, and actually be believed for the first time.
Yeah, and our main goal is to get them their own housing, because, and we hear this time and time again, I don't want to be in another shelter. So for us, it's big for us to get them their own housing. And Breann was talking about hotels. So for emergency stuff, we use hotels. Some of it is because they may have a kid in school in that area and they don't want to up and move the kid out of school. They want to stay close to that, or a job. So we help them not only in housing them if we need to, but also helping them find.
We don't want to uproot them from everything.
Yes.
Yeah, if we don't have to.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one thing that impresses me so much about the hiding place and what you guys do is none of this costs these survivors a penny. I mean, this is all just a service that you're giving to the community to save lives. And you guys have a weekly group therapy session where survivors get together and you guys give counseling. Breann, you're a licensed counselor.
Yeah.
My daughter, Taylor, goes up and watches the kids while you guys do that. And even with her, the impact that what you guys do has had on her life has been huge, because for the first time in her life, she has seen the toll that domestic violence takes, not only on the survivor, but the children. These kids are survivors too. It's really a trickle effect. It affects so many people, mainly the survivor who is in the abusive relationship, but it destroys families. Do you see this as generational? Do you find that a lot of your survivors or abusers that they're fleeing from, that this was something that happened in past generations in their family?
Absolutely. Yes. It's funny that you mentioned that. We actually had a shift in that support group you're talking about. I typically let them kind of guide how the support group goes. We choose different topics. Parenting came up, creating boundaries, self-care, things like that. But recently, and we've been doing it now for the past 3 or 4 weeks, the topic has been healing from childhood wounds, because we realized that those childhood wounds that specifically women in this group were facing, they noticed how it affected their lives now. And the decisions they made in their relationship was directly based on what they saw their mom and dad or stepdad, how they communicated, how they treated the children. Oftentimes when survivors are involved in DSS issues, you can look back into their past and there's been DSS when they were a child that was involved. So you can definitely see the links, and that's something we talk about, breaking those chains of generational abuse. It's so important, because if we can help break it at the survivor, then her children are not going to be affected anymore. So that's a big deal. And Taylor's been such such an awesome aspect, her and her friend Indigo, just being able to come and love on those kids and show them that they don't have to walk on tiptoes around us and they can just have fun and play. Some of these kids that walk through don't even know how to play because they're so fearful from their past life.
Yeah. And Taylor's mentioned the evolution of personalities that come out week after week as her and Indigo go up there and watch the kids. And it's really a beautiful thing for her to see these really vulnerable kids trust a stranger, which is hard. Going back to the generational issue, why do you feel like victims return to their abusers? I mean, it's because, I had a comment today that I thought was very misplaced where somebody said, if they get hit and stay, it's on you. And I think that's really the wrong attitude to have. And I think a lot of people, I've seen this comment crop up all over social media at one time or another that people victim blame and say, hey, if you're getting hit, if you're getting punched, if you're being abused, you go back. That's your problem. Why do victims go back?
Right. And we hear this a lot. People ask this. The statistics show that survivors go back 7 times on average. And it's not just them going back because they're in love with the person. There's specific things. First of all, abusers are really good at making victims think that the abuse is their fault. Victims may stay because they believe they caused the violence and that they can also make it stop. They want to fix that person. Victims may stay because they're made to think they cannot survive on their own, financially or due to isolation. These abusers come in, they strip them of all of their finances, strip them from transportation oftentimes, and then start ticking off their family members and their friends, creating issues with each of those people so that they don't want to be a part of the survivor's life anymore. So at the point of leaving, they don't have anyone or any money. And there's also a real fear of more abuse or death if they leave. In fact, a victim's risk of getting killed greatly increases when they're in the process of leaving. And a victim may also return to the abuser because it is the person that they fell in love with. And the abuser, like you were talking about, promises, I'm going to change. I went to therapy. I'll do counseling with you. I'll do whatever I need to do. And then they pull them back into that space, and couple of weeks later, abuse again.
Are there any potential warning signs that abusers might show that we could pick up on?
So there's no way to spot an abuser in a crowd, but most abusers do share some common characteristics. Some of them can be subtle. They include things like they insist on moving quickly into a relationship. And you can start checking these off in your head. They can be very charming. It may seem too good to be true. What do they say about Ted Bundy?
He was smart, handsome, but a monster.
Yeah. They insist that you stop participating in your preferred leisure activities or spending time with family and friends. Isolation is huge.
Yeah. We just talked about that with Tammy Daybell, actually, that coercive control.
Yeah.
And that was something that I never really considered until recently, which is, we're kind of going off topic, but most people that watch this are going to be coming off Chad's trial and understand what I'm talking about. You have Chad who moved Tammy from Springville, from everybody and everything she knew, to Rexburg, a tiny, tiny, beautiful little town in Idaho, but you don't see each other every day. She always lived a block away from her sister Samantha. They saw each other or talked daily, but as you move away and your lives get very different and distant, I think to me, that was one way that Chad was able to kind of control Tammy, is to get her away from anybody that might hold her accountable if they see something that's not right. Because that's the one thing with Tammy, I think, is she had all these friends in Rexburg that she worked with, but not her core group that knows her like nobody else, that would be able to say on a daily basis, like, what's different? It allows the abuser to control so many things. Do you see more physical abuse or mental, or is it just a healthy mix of both?
I think it's a healthy mix of both. Yeah. And I think that a lot of the survivors that call us, a lot of the times it does start verbal, mental. They're screaming at you, they're belittling you, and then it continues to grow. So we've seen that change too. We've seen some of our survivors, our clients, go back. And when they do go back, it escalates immensely at that point. So what was mental abuse turns into physical physical and mental. But I will say, you know, a lot of our survivors say that the mental abuse that they experienced was far worse than the physical abuse that they experienced. So that could be different for different people, of course. But a lot of our survivors say that when they get into your brain and they start to manipulate the way you think about yourself, the way you think about the world, that's the biggest form of isolation, I think, because you end up turning on yourself and questioning yourself.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
When you make somebody feel there's somebody entirely different than who they were before they went in that relationship, and you change the way they see their self, it's just an easier way to manipulate them on a daily basis.
Absolutely. That's something we have to work on with our clients in that support group and individual sessions. They come to us and they say, I don't even know who I am anymore. Like, I don't have an identity. My identity was being his wife. So I don't even know what I like to do. I don't have any hobbies, things like that. So we have to work on it. It's like literally being like reborn and learning what you like again. And sometimes, a lot of the times, what you like now was totally different than before you met your abuser. It's like you're a new person.
Yeah, we have some, and it's the brain, right? The brain is an amazing thing. Some survivors have never painted a day in their life, and part of their healing, they become these amazing painters that just do amazing work. And they're like, I never did this before.
Yeah.
And it's just part of their healing journey. Jumping back into like warning signs, jealousy and controlling is huge. And we're big on education. We want to educate people of what to look for if you're in a relationship and somebody's controlling.
Red flag, right?
Huge red flag. They do not take responsibility for their actions, and they blame others for everything that goes wrong. They criticize their partner's appearance and make frequent put downs, and their words and actions don't match.
That's one thing that I've seen is people that I know personally that were in abusive relationships. Looking back, you can see when you were in a group setting, the survivor was always the butt of the joke when the abuser.
Yeah.
It's those subtle signs that we don't pick up on in the moment, but seeing you guys do what you've been doing for nearly 2 years now, by the way, 2 years of serving these men and women and children is huge. And I'm in awe of what you guys have done. The goal of this is for somebody out there who may not even realize they're in an abusive relationship, because it's not always the physical aspect. It's an acclimation, I think. Do you guys see that mental abuse start off very subtly, and then before you know it, it's off the rails? And does that...
It's like quicksand.
Yeah.
It is like, it starts out, and you're just right on the surface. And then by the time it ends, you're almost over your head and you don't know how to get out. You don't know what to do. You want to get out, but you don't know how.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of those calls. What should I do?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking too when we get the call and they're explaining what they're going through, and they're like, I'm not really sure if this is abuse, but this is what I'm going through. And it's one of the most horrific stories we've heard. And we have to tell that lady or man over the phone, like, no, this is abuse. What you're going through is not okay. Mm-hmm. And typically they start to get emotional because they've never had someone, number one, listen to their story and truly believe them. And number two, speak on what it is that's happening to them.
Right, and just validate maybe the suspicions they have in their head. And maybe just to hear those words come out, you are in an abusive relationship, even though they live it every day, to hear it from professionals. Oh yeah, you're in one. It has to be very sobering. Even if you're so deep into it and you feel there's no way out, to hear you are a victim. And I hate to say victim because these are survivors, but in the moment, you are a victim of domestic violence. I'm sure you have a lot of people who think maybe this is not right, but do you have people that just have been blown away when you say, absolutely, this is an abusive relationship, you need to get out?
Yes, for sure. Even in support group, the women are very vulnerable and feel very comfortable in the space. So they share more details about what they went through. And when they see, I think, the shock on our faces and the other ladies' faces, they start to really realize what they went through, how extreme it truly was.
I take the majority of the calls that come in. A lot of times they're trying to convince me that they've been in a domestic violence relationship. And for me, that just tugs on my heart. And I have to tell them, listen, I believe you. You don't have to keep telling me these things because I believe what you're saying. And we talk about narcissism and things like that. And they're like, wow, yeah, you really believe it? And I'm like, yes.
I bet there are people you guys talk to that have no idea what a narcissist is, but by the time you explain it, it's probably, if you look in a dictionary, you would see their abuser right there. It has to be so opening, the signs and symptoms of a narcissist, that the power they put on you in subtle or big ways, and the person's just not even aware that this is a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And two things that their abuser is telling them, which we know is all lies, but it's things that keep them isolated and under that hand of all kind of threats. I'm going to take your kids.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's a big one we hear. That's hard. So that's controlling them. Oh, I can't leave because I'm going to lose my kids. That's a big one too.
Would you say that the two biggest reasons that victims don't leave is finances and then children?
Yes.
I think so.
In our state of South Carolina right now, housing is hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very hard. We don't have enough housing for everyone. Income is a big one. If they all are drawing some kind of, and we have some ladies that draw like SSI and things like that. SSDI, I think is the other one. Being able to afford to live on your own it's
nearly
hard.
impossible.
It's hardly impossible.
It really is.
For a single person.
Yeah.
They're bringing in $1,200 a month. Well, apartments in our area on the low are $1,200 a month, and that's just the apartment.
It's like a 1-bedroom, right?
Yeah, it's
Right.
one bedroom, and we do this. I'm the resource director, so I'm constantly looking for housing places for our ladies because they're ready to be in their own space, which I don't blame them.
No.
Some of our clients we have 3 and 4 kids. You try living in a shelter with 3 or 4 kids, it's nearly impossible.
And then you see too with the financial aspect, like you just mentioned, of if they're getting some money a month, it's just not enough. And then that just keeps that cycle going because a lot of people feel there are no options.
Yeah.
Where you guys come in.
Yeah. And we help them in those ways to find a job and education and things like that.
As far as abusers, I mean, is it possible for abusers to change?
Yes, but they first have to make the choice to change their behavior. So it's not just an easy thing for them to just choose to stop abusing. It requires a serious commitment for change. Once an abuser has had all the power in the relationship, it can be difficult to transition into a healthy relationship where each partner has equal respect. Sometimes an abusive partner stops one form of abuse, so maybe the physical violence, but continues other forms of abuse. And it's important to remember that domestic violence includes multiple forms of abuse, and it's all a part of just trying to seek power and control. So I think a lot of people come to us and say, well, what about marriage counseling? And my personal and professional opinion on this, it's not the same as everybody's, but mine is you don't need to go into marriage counseling with an abuser. An abuser needs to work on their behavior before taking it into a marriage counseling situation, because all they're going to do in that marriage counseling situation is manipulate the situation. Taking care of themselves and what they need to work on for change is so vital.
Totally agree.
And then you think if you go right into couples counseling for a DV situation, I mean, clearly the survivor is not going to open up in front of their abuser.
No.
And I think that's what's so important about your weekly group sessions that you guys do. That group of kindred spirits, unfortunately, that have experienced some form of domestic violence, and that feeling of it's not just me that goes through this every day. I think that there's strength in numbers. And do you find that the group that you guys do every week with the counseling and just the getting it out sessions, do you find that gives the survivors the strength to keep the goal focused on making that change to becoming independent and out?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's accountability. Yeah, community is vital, and there's accountability within that. And that's something that Jennifer and I, or Fruit Loop and I take very seriously, is when you join our program, we're going to hold you to a level of accountability where we're going to make sure that you're reaching goals that you have set for yourself. That's a big part of it, actually. And encouraging them to reach their goals with us knowing what those are and saying, I see you slipping here a little bit. How can we help you move forward in this? It's important because without that, you do feel alone. And that, I think when you leave abuse, that's one of the most lonely times. Even though you're out of the abuse, you feel like everything that I've known has kind of just been taken away or ripped from me.
And we've seen our group, they hold each other accountable.
Yes.
But that's important because you guys are the program directors and you're kind of like the moms up there. You're the one that everybody goes to for the answers and the comfort and the tools to improve their situation. But when you have a group, and this is a women's only group, so when you have a group of your sisters that are hold you accountable, I think it's just so important, because then you've got somebody who's been in a similar situation as yourself saying, hey, come on, you got to come. When people miss, are you guys just fearful that something's happened and they went back?
I think there's always that.
There's always that. Most of the time they let us know they're not going to be there. We've had some clients that we've had to pull that didn't show up for a few weeks.
We truly care about our clients, and they're not just, it's hard to call them clients sometimes because we form such a tight relationship with them, and that's how we're different. We want to be their first person that they go to. We want to be that community for them. So when they miss, there's always that little bit of, or when they don't answer their phone, like, okay, what's happening here?
I wanted to share a little bit about our organization's viewpoint. We are not a religious organization on paper because we don't want to hinder somebody from coming from us. So we've served all religious views, backgrounds. Yeah. We have no limitations on taking anyone. We'll serve anybody that calls, no matter their gender, ethnicity, their religion,
sexual orientation,
nothing. Yeah. We want to serve all people. We want to help them heal. I do this work because the Lord laid it on my heart to do it. I love people, and I want to see what's best for them. It made sense to me. I was like, if 1 in 7 women go back, how do you fix that? And the Lord laid it on my heart. You fix it by fixing the abuser.
Or helping the abuser change.
So Breann has been a part of South Carolina Restorative Justice Initiative. It's a big thing in our state that she's been a part of, and she's going to share what we're getting into with that. It was like a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, wait, this is broke? And it's just a cycle of women going in shelter upon shelter upon shelter and trying to fix it, and it's not working. She's going to share a little more about that.
I get the opportunity to go to a workshop in Columbia that's sponsored by the Restorative Justice Initiative and SCVASA, which is our coalition in our state. And what it focuses on is restorative justice. You may have heard of transformative justice before, so this is a little bit different. This is called restorative justice. And what we're focusing on in these workshops is creating circles where people come together, and the key is accountability. So bringing in a person that is harmed, they don't like to use the word abuser, they like to say a person that's caused harm, and bringing in people that will hold them accountable in their lives, bringing people in from the community, bringing professionals in, and helping that person truly understand what they've done, the consequences to their actions, helping them understand how domestic violence impacts the brain, things like that. Then also having another circle with the person who has been harmed and her or his community, professionals in that area, asking that person, what do you need to be able to move forward and to heal from this? And sometimes in different states up north, these circles have been brought together, and the person that is harmed and the person who has caused harm is in the circle with a bunch of different accountability partners. And it's not about restoring the relationship, but it's about restoring who those people were and who those people are. If a man comes in and he's harmed a woman and his children multiple times, this group is created to be able to hold him accountable so that he can be a better dad, he can be a better son, a better community member, and it's stopping their actions. If we're just throwing abusers in jail, and there's no plan for them to grow and plan for them to understand why it's not okay what they're doing, then when they get out of jail, they're just going to go abuse the next person. Mm-hmm. So this is what this initiative is bringing up and educating our state about. It's something that I'm excited to bring into the upstate, because I think there are misconceptions about domestic violence. And a lot of the times we look at abusers and say, there's just no hope. But what if there is? What if we can work with them to make a difference and to change their path, just like we're changing the paths of survivors?
And all that is done over months and months.
Yes.
Meetings. It's not one meeting and then you throw them together and, whatever.
And sometimes the survivor doesn't even meet with the person. They write a letter instead. Things like that if they're not comfortable.
It's breaking that cycle. We need to talk about it, about the kid going through it and then going through it as an adult. Mm-hmm. It's breaking that cycle And that kid, through divorce period, kids get run through the ringer. And that's part of that cycle. Healthy relationships.
It's literally restoring shattered lives. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But you have to get to the root of the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And that root of the problem is the abuser.
Yes, absolutely.
And do you oftentimes find the abuser saw abuse in the home as a child? It goes back to that generational thing, but I would venture and guess that a lot of people out there who abuse either were abused as children or saw it happen to another parent.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. We have had some co-parenting sessions over Zoom with a survivor and the person that was abusing them because they share children, right? Some of them share custody. So I have mediated and facilitated those kind of Zoom sessions where we're talking about how can we co-parent better. I hear a little bit of the abuser's story, what he's went through. That's what it takes. Can they change? Well, maybe if someone's in their life, that's a counselor that's going to truly hold them accountable and make them see these steps cannot continue. We've got to stop it somewhere.
And I think it's important that it's outside help because I think a lot of times family members are really just unaware of the level of domestic violence that's going on in their family members' lives in private.
Well, and it's a big thing. Who wants to broadcast it and say to your family, oh, hey, I'm over here, I'm being abused, being embarrassed.
Especially in the South, right?
Yeah.
Divorce, that's a thing that a lot of people frown upon. And it's right in the Bible Belt.
Yeah. And we're going to change that. Every religion needs to normalize in every congregation across the world. The relationship is that if you feel like you're going to hurt your partner, you want to kill your partner, we would much rather you get divorced and everybody come out alive and move and go their separate ways. But we still in this day and age see that shaming of mainly women who choose to get out of a relationship that is unhealthy, but just across religions in general, because a lot of the cases that we've covered that have been domestic violence where somebody is killed, it's why don't you just get a divorce? We have to normalize getting out of unhealthy and toxic relationships because in 2024, there's still such a stigma in a lot of different ways, whether it be family, church, groups of friends. It needs to be normal. It's not the end of the world. You're not a bad person because you choose to separate yourself from that. And I just, that's one thing I've said recently on the podcast.
When education, and that's what we're big on. We want to educate churches and groups and whatever. If you're being abused and somebody's encouraging you to stay, it's a problem because it's not safe for you to be there.
Right.
Or safe for your children to be there.
Yeah. Choking is one thing we hear over and over, and somebody being choked out and things like that. That is a huge red flag. Sending somebody back into that, how is that healthy and how does that work? That's not safe.
No. And to this day, we say married. It's exactly such a huge crime.
Let them work on it. That's the thing you hear. Oh, he's going to counseling. He's getting counseling. But work on it under another roof.
Right.
Yeah, be separate.
Yeah. And what we've heard is, well, you as a survivor, you're breaking your family. Broken family is a huge thing. I don't want to break my family. My children, I want them to have two parents under the same roof. But this is something we actually have been involved with our local school district doing preventative classes with some of their adult education students. I explained it as my family is not broken. It is healthy because I chose to step away from what I was going through so that my children can have a better life. Staying in abuse, I think that's a broken situation, right? It's not going to be fixed. But when you have the courage to step out of that brokenness, you're able to be healthy again, and your children are able to see a healthy parent living a healthy life. And it's so important. Children that witness domestic violence experience the same kind of symptoms as children being abused directly. So even if your child has never been touched by your abuser, they're still experiencing the same symptoms witnessing it. That's a huge thing. Your children are being affected by that. And that's something a lot of the mothers in the group we have, we praise them for stepping out because their children are able to see a new version of their mom.
Right. And not only that, but the longer a child is in a home where domestic violence is normal, that becomes normal behavior for the child. And then it goes way back to what we started in the beginning of this episode is that generational curse.
Yeah.
Where it goes on. And same for girls.
Yeah.
To see a mother be verbally or physically abused, if it's all you know, then it just seems to me it's a higher probability that either one, the male or the female child, would repeat those kind of things or allow those kind of things to be done because it's normal.
Yeah, this statistic blew me away. We just learned, I don't know, 2 months ago, I guess, reading that when abuse is in the home, the mom or dad is being abused, 75% of the kids will eventually be abused. That number is, I mean,
Yeah, blew us away.
yeah,
Staggering.
yeah.
How can people help a loved one who is being abused?
So if you suspect a loved one is being abused, it's important to be willing to support this person as they share, leave, and grieve through the process. If your loved one confides in you, help them make a safety plan. This plan should include excuses they can use if they need to leave the situation, where they can go if they decide to leave, and an escape bag filled with essentials they will need if they need to leave quickly. Also, put your loved one in touch with resources that helps them stay safe and get the help they need. This is where our program comes into play, the hiding place. If your loved one is experiencing domestic violence, or maybe you have questions and want some guidance, I don't care what state you're in. You can call our 24/7 hotline, and normally I will answer. That would
It's called to say, hey,
you call and talk. I need my office number, but that hotline number is 888-341-9568. And we're willing to help anyone who's in need with resources, guidance, and support.
in any state.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's just make that really clear. So you can be in Washington State, but
Yeah.
Breann here in South Carolina are going to do everything they can to help you. And, in fact, at CrimeCon, I had a few people come up to me who know what you guys are doing and ask me for help. And I gave them your number. And they were like, well, I don't live in South Carolina. I'm like, doesn't matter. Call. They will find the resources. They will guide you in the right direction. They will give you an emergency plan. They will get you started.
It doesn't mean we're going to uproot you from your state. Maybe you want to be uprooted. There's been moments where we've flown people to different states, but we're not going to uproot you from your state. We're going to help you find the resources for you in your state and just be a support system for you.
In general, tell us about the hiding place, what you both have created, and tell us how it works. What is provided to these survivors when they come to you?
Yeah, so our mission is to provide safe and discreet places for survivors to heal from domestic violence with dignity, hope, and true healing. We offer multiple services at absolutely no cost. We offer safe housing that can be emergency or transitional safe housing, counseling that looks like individual or group counseling through our weekly support group. A lot of the counseling, sometimes people call the hotline and they don't necessarily need housing. They've already got their own apartment or their own house, but they do want counseling. So I do all counseling virtually. And this looks like if you're a survivor that's been out for 12 years and you're listening to this podcast right now and you've never truly dealt with the issues and you want to heal from that, you can contact us and we'll start doing virtual sessions with you at no cost. And this also looks like if you just left and you need counseling and you want support, we can do that virtually as well. The same with resourcing. So resourcing is all Fruit Loops. Sorry, I keep calling her Brown. All Fruit Loops area of expertise. She is an incredible resource director. So she finds everything from job placement, job training, helping you with your resume, helping you find state benefits, helping you find, obviously, housing is a huge thing. Some people require, psychiatrists that need to join our team to kind of help. So if we have to resource out to other organizations, that's a huge thing. Sometimes people come to us and they have a drug or alcohol issue, and we completely understand people have those kind of issues and we want to help, but we believe that we have to address those issues before we work on healing. So we'll resource out to different rehab centers that we've partnered with. And we also are just now recently going to be offering children's groups for the summer, and that's going to be helping children work through emotions and what are these emotions that I'm feeling, how to deal with these emotions. A lot of the times we have to resource to advocacy groups that are specific for children to help them get different forms of counseling and behavioral help as well. And then advocacy. Advocacy can look like a lot of different things. Sometimes we go to hospitals and sit with survivors when they're hurt. We go to doctor's appointments to help advocate. We go to court hearings and help advocate. So however we can just join, like we said, as that community to support that individual, we're going to do it. That's the overview of the program.
And we're 3 staff.
And volunteers, wonderful, incredible volunteers. Yeah.
You guys do have some good volunteers. Aside from my own kid, you guys really do have a great crew up there who are dedicated to these survivors. And what sets you guys apart? How are you able to be different with the resources you have? And it's not like one place is better than the other, but what makes you different?
We've said shelter a few times. So we always joke, you know how people have a cuss jar where you put $1 in the jar every time you cuss? It's like the shelter jar. If you say shelter, we're going to put $1 in, because shelter is such a bad word in our area. When a survivor hears shelter, they think of bunk beds like lined up and no privacy, and you're sharing all the food, you're not able to cook in your area, like all of those things. We knew when we first started, we did not want to be that. We wanted, when survivors came on site, they had a home that they could cook, they could have a TV, they could have a private bathroom space, things like that. So in our women's cottage on site, we have implemented that. When survivors have walked in, they've had just a sigh of relief, because they thought they were going to walk into like a shelter space and they walked into a home instead. So that's a huge thing for us. I also think, being a survivor myself, there's a different approach to counseling because I've been there before. So I'm able to sit with a survivor in that. And I think that's a really special thing. Sometimes when people call, I don't always tell them immediately that I'm a survivor, until it gets to the point where they're like, well, you don't understand. And I'm like, well, actually, let me tell you, you're not alone. Mm-hmm. And that's another shock factor of like, oh, wow, okay, you've gotten out of this. It gives them some hope, I think. And then, of course, the restorative justice practices, I think just the way we approach the situations is a little different than other agencies.
And we also partnering to create a no survivor turn away policy. We want to treat everyone who comes into our program or calls like it was your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. Mm-hmm. We want them to feel that care and concern, because a lot of times they don't get that. Mm-hmm. And some programs, because of time and the amount of calls they receive, they lose that a little bit. And
it becomes a number, right?
Yeah. We don't want to treat them like a number. We want to treat them like a person, a human being.
And people are pretty surprised by that bold policy. We don't turn survivors away. So that looks like when they call, if we can't house them on site or that's not the best choice for them, we're going to utilize a hotel. We're going to resource them out to another program. We are going to help you find a solution. We're not going to just leave you stranded. Survivors have heard the word no enough, and we're not willing to let that happen.
Yeah. And I think too, in this part of the country, I know the domestic violence rates are higher in South Carolina than in a lot of states. Isn't that right? I mean,
yeah, we sit number 11.
Yeah. I mean, this is scary. I mean, it's every day you're lucky to be alive when you're living with an abuser. So when somebody calls the hotline, what does that process look like?
So they call our hotline. I answer mainly.
We're working on getting volunteers to help relieve Prelude.
I like doing that. They call, we kind of do an assessment with them and see what their needs are, where they're at, where they want to be. And then we just start working as a team, finding housing. We don't go into a home and remove them. Normally we'll get a police officer to go in just because it's not safe. We don't know the environment. Obviously, there's DV there. So there's some violence tendencies. So violent tendencies. You got it. Again, it's my to keep ourselves safe. We help them get out, but we have somebody go in and get them.
And I think it's important to note that we are not the ones to call in place of 911. If there's an emergency happening, right, then 911 must be called.
Yeah.
We're the people to call when you have a private moment to yourself. We've had some calls where the abuser walks in and it gets a little hairy.
As we're doing the assessment, I've had before, I'm like, okay, can you give me the name of your abuser, which we only use for our records? Mm-hmm. And they're like, I can't. Mm-hmm. And it's like, what? And they're like, they're in the room. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we kind of play that off and, we'll finish that later or they'll call back or something. Yeah. But so we do all that assessment and then we start helping them find where they need to go.
How can people get connected to your organization, learn more about it, donate? We've had Alibis because Fruit Loop and I started this podcast almost 4 years ago together until they started the hiding place. We've had Alibis who have donated money to you guys. We've had Alibis that one that drove paintings from up north for you guys to put, and they're so beautiful in the common area, very fitting. We've had people donate clothing, but if someone wants to be connected with your organization, whether it's to be educated because they're victims, to get a hotline number, to see how they can help, how can people find you guys?
Yeah, so for our 24/7 hotline, and I think Gigi's going to post this as well, and I believe it's on the screen right now too. The number is 888-341-9568. And that's to call if you are a victim, or if you're interested in counseling, or if you're a person that just wants to ask us some questions about a relationship and you're just concerned for someone else or for yourself. You just call that number and you'll get one of us to be able to walk you. You'll get free loop to be able to walk you through that. But I think it's important to trust when you call that number, you're going to get, and once we continue to grow, you're going to get a trauma-informed advocate that's trained on how to address these situations. And you're always promised a team that's going to make sure to fight for you and fight alongside you. A lot of the times we use the term, a person's in a trench or in a deep, dark hole, and we are the ones that are being willing to come down into the deep, dark hole and climb out with survivors. Because you're right, Gigi, like you mentioned, they are victims in those moments. They're being treated horribly, and the strength to step out and become a survivor is a huge step of courage and bravery. And then with donations and other support, we have a link tree that you can click that, and it's basically the go-to. You can find our website, donation platforms, PayPal, Venmo, and our social media
linked in the description, so you guys can click and just usually every month, Pretty Lies and Alibis, we put into the hiding place, because Fruit Loop and I started this. And really, this is sort of still a joint venture, because the cases that Fruit Loop and I followed, such as Gabby Petito, they're real situations that happen way more often than we would ever care to think about. You told the number, probably every second of every day, somebody somewhere is getting abused.
Yeah.
And so what is the future of the hiding place in your mind? What is your dream? I know tiny houses.
First, I want to say Alibis have been amazing. And I can't mention you individually because I'll forget someone because of my brain. I got fog up in there. You guys are amazing. I still have Alibis who still listen to the podcast. When we have a need come up, because there's sometimes we have needs come up that we don't necessarily have the funds for, or
aren't budgeted, right?
Budgeted or something. So I can call on several of you, and you're like, boom, right there. So you're truly making a difference in lives. And sometimes that looks like food. And people don't think about this, but when someone leaves and they're in a hotel room, they may not have any way to eat. And so sometimes we send out messages to you guys and we're like, hey, we have this need, any way you could help. And you guys are always supportive and help in huge ways. So I didn't want to forget to say that.
Right.
I think that credits the community that you two brought together and that you created. Gigi, you're doing so much through just helping find justice for these families, these real families that are going through horrific things, not just domestic violence, but so many other things. And I admire you for what you do, and just this that you've grown. Just exponentially. It's incredible. And we're just happy to be able to partner with you and just appreciate you so much for what you do. I'm trying not to cry because it means a lot. A lot of the times Jennifer Fruit Loop and I talk about how alone this work feels sometimes, because we're up on that mountain all by ourselves doing really tough work. But when you have people, a community like you, Gigi, and the Pretty Lies community that you mentioned, it allows us to feel less alone. So we can't thank you guys enough, and thank you enough, Gigi.
Here's the best thing is I would have never started this podcast without Fruit Loop. And so whether it's coming on and doing something like this, you both are always going to be a part of this. And I'm going to be a part of the hiding place. I think that's the beauty of it, is life took us in two different paths as far as where we started. But what an important job you guys are doing. You're literally saving lives. Every day you are making a difference, breaking cycles, getting people out alive, giving them the resources and the knowledge to get out alive. And so I'm equal. I tell everybody all the time, I'm so proud of Fruit Loop and Breann. The future, we talk about like tiny houses and things like that. You guys have big plans.
Yeah.
They're probably huge.
Yeah, we have 40 acres. We want to start next year and the year after, start putting in tiny homes that someone can have their own space. They're not in a bunk bed, in a large room, sharing a room with someone, that you have your own space.
So our program will look a little different in that fashion. We'll still have the emergency approach, so emergency hotline, all of those things, but then we'll have the transitional housing part of our program that focuses on specific programming. They would probably be in the tiny home for maybe a year. We haven't nailed that down completely, but maybe a year. And during that year, they're going to be a part of intensive programming that focuses on their healing journey. It'll be the same people for that whole year in that community. So they'll kind of grow together. As they exit, we'll take on people from our emergency program into that program. So it allows them to transition really well. There's so many other buildings we can also occupy on the space. We can't tell you a lot about our space because we keep it extremely confidential, but there are other buildings that over the next 2 years we're going to be renovating and also utilizing those for more emergency housing space. We're just really excited about the growth. We think that as we grow, our community will also grow. That's our hope, is that we continue to spread awareness and get our community on board to help support these survivors and change the dialogue around survivors in the upstate.
It takes a village. I mean, you guys are doing the important work of getting these people out and getting them housed to keep them safe. But we do. It does take a village. And you guys have had several companies step in and do major jobs for you guys out of the goodness of their heart. The HVAC system, I believe, wasn't that?
Yes.
I mean, the labor, everything was gifted. You guys didn't have air. It's hot in the South, y'all.
It is.
Okay, it's my winter.
And I ain't gonna lie.
I mean, it's sweat. Yeah, you go to the mailbox, you lose 3 pounds of water weight. The graciousness that people have already shown, the hiding place, is huge. And I'm just really excited to see what the future brings, because with the drive that you both have, and I think the resources that we all can collectively pull together, if you bring that statistic down one tiny notch, that's huge.
Sure.
So you guys keep on keeping on. I'm going to leave everything in the description, but in the meantime, where can people find you online?
They can find us on Facebook and Instagram under Channel Missions. And we have a link tree that is linktree/Channel Missions, which she'll link to this episode. So you're able to find us.
And we have an Amazon list.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So we'll put the Amazon list in here as well. This just has everyday needs that they need, laundry detergent, paper towels, things like that we go by ourselves. Everything is covered. So we'll link all our social media, their link tree, as well as that Amazon wish list in the description here. So if you can and you feel inclined, please help. If not, just share the page or share something about domestic violence and breaking the cycle, because there are so many people out there that none of us would ever suspect are in these terrible relationships, and they keep it hidden for all the reasons we've just talked about. But awareness and getting the word out, you're not alone. There are people out there who have, like Breann and Fruit Loop, now dedicated their entire lives 24/7 to Breann's kids and these survivors and their kids. And let's start a fire. Let's get this going. Let's get some people pumped up. And I've had people reach out to me who are interested in starting their own domestic violence safe havens, or even just counseling sessions. Every single time that I've referred somebody or texted and said, hey, I have somebody who would like to ask you about this, are they going to call? Absolutely. So you've got good resources here. If you have questions about how to start things, how to start getting out of these relationships, don't hesitate. That's what they do. If you're a company listening to this and you want, they're tax-free. Tell us about its tax. I don't understand what tax stuff, y'all.
We're a 501c3.
There you go.
So it's tax deductible.
Yeah,
all your donations. Yeah. So that's another thing. Our Give Butter. We also have PayPal and Venmo, and every single thing is tax deductible. So at the end of the year, we will send you the form for that so you can take it off on your taxes.
So let's do it, y'all. Let's help Channel Missions and the hiding place and these survivors out. Everything is linked in the description below. If you have any questions, reach out to them, reach out to me. I'll get you in touch with whoever. But I'm so glad you guys came on, because Fruit Loop, when you and I were doing this together, too many times we reported on a murder that was a domestic violence issue. And unfortunately, that is not an uncommon occurrence. And it may not just be the verbal or the physical. People lose their lives. And it doesn't have to be that way. So thank you for what you do. And we're going to have you guys back on periodically for some updates. Follow them on social media. There are some photos of the property that don't give away the location. My favorite part's the road because the sound, just the minute that I cross onto that property, there's something about it. And I think a lot of it's the love that you guys put out into the world that makes you feel almost like you're being embraced the minute that you come there. And I can't imagine what that would feel like for a survivor, somebody getting out of something violent. I come from a very safe home and go up there and feel so comfortable. And what you guys do is amazing. And it is some of the most important work in this world. So keep on keeping on. We'll keep the Alibis posted. And a big thanks to all y'all Alibis that even if you can't donate, you've shared their page and make people aware there are options and you can get out alive and start a brand new life with the help of people like Breann and Fruit Loop. Anything else y'all want to say?
I think we're good. Thank you so much.
Just, I'm so proud of you guys, and I can't wait to see what the next few years brings. And if I have to get my boots on and come up there with a rake and a shovel, I'm just going in that creepy attic. Nope, that's Fruit Loop's job. And then I just want to say thank you guys too for sparking in my daughter, who just graduated high school, a passion for helping people. She's always been a helper, but this has really opened her eyes to the lives that people have gone through that she did not have to go through. Her ability to relate to these women and children, I think it's been so good in developing her character. And even my youngest daughter and my son, you know, all three of my kids have been impacted by the good you're putting out, and it's taught them lessons about taking care of people and loving people. And I think the biggest thing is when you see something, say something. It could
Absolutely.
Like
yeah.
So that's it, y'all. We will keep you updated. So good having you on. I mean, you're sitting across from me. Yeah. So thank you guys, and we will keep you updated on channel missions. But in the meantime, you guys have a good rest of your afternoon.